Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we are all learning together to peace out. And I'm going to say it again because I say it almost every morning, but I've had lots of chances to practice. And I hope that we're getting better with our practice, that we're a little bit faster to roll things over on God and just trust Him to carry it for us. As a matter of fact, we're going to look at a story today, and I called this the unusual battle because it's very interesting how God brought peace in this circumstance. And sometimes it's an unusual way to get to peace, right? Sometimes we have to, God is really creative, but He's always going to be the Prince of Peace. But I love the creativity of God and the ideas that He gives. As a matter of fact, there's a scripture in Proverbs that says that He gives witty inventions. And I'm like, I need witty inventions and supernatural interventions. That's what I need in my life. I don't know about you, but that's what I've been praying for my stuff around here lately. Anyway, I hope you're having a good morning. I hope you're having a good week. This week's almost over. As a matter of fact, March is almost over. I'm ready for a good, solid spring. I'm hoping it's right around the corner because I'm ready. I don't know if you're ready, but I am ready for spring. Anyway, make sure you sign up for Dove's Fire Ministries newsletter. It's on my main profile. Maybe I'll go pin it to the top so you can find it easier. That's where I will continue to send Pakistani printing updates and ministry updates and what's going on, the books, my books and stuff, which are now available on Apple. I'm still in the process of uploading some of them, but I've got most of them up and running. So that way I'm not going to spend as much time telling y'all what I'm doing. You're going to have to go get the email to find out for sure, right? You never know. You'll never know. Fear of missing out, right? Anyway, so let's get into some scriptures. So this morning, as I was praying about what I could share and thinking about, what I could do, it's been kind of crazy around here the last 16 years, 64 years. Anyway, and so I was thinking, and I just had this story come to mind, and I was like, well, that's an interesting story to think about. So I ran and got my Bible, and I'd literally just opened it to 2 Kings 6. I knew it was in 2 Kings. I knew it was Elisha, but I wasn't sure where it was. And I went to 2 Kings, and there it was in chapter 6. And what's happened is the king of Syria is fighting the king of Israel. But Elisha is in Israel, and so God is giving him answers, and so he's warning the king of Israel and saying, don't go over there, the Syrians are going to be there. And don't go over there today because the Syrians are going to be there. They're setting up an ambush over here. And God was just giving Elisha like supernatural protection and it was like just inside information on the enemy and how the king of Israel could avoid it. So thankfully, the king of Israel listened to the prophet, listened to Elisha, so he was able to avoid all the traps. So the king of Syria gets mad, right? And he's like, man, I'm trying to get these guys. How in the world is he always knowing where we're going to be? And so his servant said, it's Elisha the prophet. He keeps telling him where it's going to be. So the king of Syria sends a whole army. It says he sent horses and chariots and a great army there. And he came by night and surrounded the city, not just Elisha's house, but the whole city. Of course, these cities weren't quite as big as our cities, but they was still a city, right? So it says, so he sends his armies, he surrounds the whole city, and Elisha's servant gets up the next morning and goes outside and runs back in and says, Elisha, there's like an army surrounding the whole city. And so he's like, what are we going to do? And Elisha said this, do not fear. Now, where have we heard that before? Haven't we read so many scriptures where, like, even when angels appear, that's almost always the first thing they say is, don't be afraid. Don't fear. It's all cool, right? So Elisha said, don't fear. And listen to what he said to his servant. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And then Elisha prayed and said, God, open my servant's eyes. And so there was help there that he couldn't see. And as God opened the servant's eyes, he went, there was a bigger army, right? It says that the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. God had surrounded the army that was surrounding Elisha. So God surrounded the army with another army, an army of fiery chariots and horses sent from heaven. So there was help there that they couldn't see. There was no need to be afraid. Elisha had total peace. So then here's the cool part. Okay. So then Elisha prays and he goes, okay, first he prays, he says, open the eyes of my servant. Now this is interesting. This is really cool. I'm kind of chasing a little rabbit here. But he says, God, open the eyes of my servant and let him see. The servant goes, whoa, where'd the horses and chariots come from? And Elisha's like, that's the horses and chariots of God. And then he says, God, blind the eyes of the army. That's a total opposite. That's a total opposite prayer. Open my servant's eyes, but close my enemy's eyes. And God did it. And so then Elisha goes, oh, what's the matter, you guys? You can't see no more, right? No, he probably didn't do that, but I would have. That's why God didn't let me do cool stuff like that, because that's how I am. But anyway, so Elisha goes out and he says, here, let me help you. I'll take you where you need to go. And he takes the army. They're blind. They have to follow, right? They followed him right to the king of Israel, and he took them right into captivity. And then he prayed and said, open their eyes. Well, then the king says, the king of Israel saw him and he says, do I get to kill him? Can I kill him? And Elisha goes, no, don't kill him. Let's try something different. Let's not go the traditional route. Let's take an idea given by God, because only God could have given this idea. Only God could make the servant see, and only God can make the army blind. Isn't that cool? I love the cool stuff God does. Anyway, so then instead of killing them, instead of making them prisoners of war, instead of torturing them, and all of that was cool back in their culture, they could have done all kinds of weird stuff to them, like all y'all see on your weird movies that y'all watch and stuff, right? Because I don't like to watch that kind of stuff too much. But anyway, so instead of doing all those cool things and mean things that they could have done, totally fair in their culture, totally fair in their day, but instead, he said, let's feed them. What? That's what it says. It says they prepared them a feast, and after they ate and drank, they sent them back to their king, to their master. And when they got back to the Syrian raiders came. It says when the Syrian raiders got home and to their king, and their leader realized that they were shown mercy, they were shown grace, and they did not deserve it. They never raided them again. It was over. It was a really cool way to peace out. They brought that peace in the end, rather than reading about some big massacre or whatever. But the war was over. It was a cool way to end a war. To end, these people were just raiding them, where they were just trying to take over. They were kind of like pirates, only on land. There was no water. All right, but so it's just really cool to me that all these little things in this story that God worked out, that were just like beyond the normal, beyond what we would even think. It's not something Elisha himself could have even come up with. It was just divinely inspired. And it's just like, in the end though, God showed him a way to get peace without fighting anybody, without calling anybody names, without making fun of anybody too much, maybe a little bit. And maybe he tricked him a little bit, right? But I was reading this, I read it like 2 or 3 times, just sitting here, and I was just like, man, God had such a unique way to bring peace into this situation for Elisha and for Israel, his people Israel. And I'm like, can't he figure out some ways to bring peace in my situations too? If he can make blind eyes see, and he can make seeing eyes blind, maybe he can help me see the things, the areas I've been blind in. Because life has a way of blinding us. We shut things out, or we choose not to see things. But he can let us see things, but he can keep us from seeing things too that we don't want to see, right? God is just so creative, and he's just so cool. And in this situation, he really walked out. He showed Elisha how to walk out. Love your enemy. Pray for your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Who would have thought they would make a feast for their enemy? These people had raided them. These people were trying to kill them, and they set them down and gave them a feast. And the war ended, and there was total peace. That is amazing to me. It's amazing how God works, and it's amazing how he brings peace in crazy situations. But if he can bring peace for these armies in this situation, he can definitely bring peace for us in our lives today. And that's why I'm going to trust him, and that's why I'm going to peace out. Peace out. Have a great day. See you again tomorrow.